everyone. Welcome to the 5-Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I'll talk about bitterness in beer, continue my interview with Chris and Trevor from One Well Brewing in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and review 1851 Zwickel from Bridge Up Brewing. I have to be honest and apologize. In this segment of Tales from the Trail, I may get a little bitter. I mean, what the hell is an IBU anyway? Okay, just so you understand what I'm talking about, I'm going to go back in time and think about my first experience with an IPA. It was definitely somewhere around 1997 or 1998. I don't remember the specifics other than my wife and I were having dinner with some of her relatives at a local restaurant. I've mentioned in previous episodes, at that time, I was a pretty staunch drinker of Beck's Light or Beck's Dark, or maybe even the occasional Killian's Red, which were readily available quote-unquote imports. Clearly, my palate was very immature at that point. When it came time to order beers, either they didn't have my beer of choice, or I just let the relatives handle it. I think you can predict what my reaction was when I put my lips on that IPA. So let's return to the original question. What the hell is an IBU anyway? IBU stands for International Bittering Unit or International Bitterness Unit. Quite simply, it is a chemical measure of the bitterness imparted in your beer from the alpha acids released by the hops during the brewing process. You will often see this number listed somewhere on the can or the bottle of your beer. There are some differing opinions on the scale, but typically it's in a range from 0 to 100 or 0 to 120. Anything over 100 and the human tongue really can't distinguish any further bitterness. Basically, the IBU was invented as another way to understand the flavor of beer. The crazy thing is that the malt and grain bill can balance out the hops enough that a beer with a high IBU value can taste quite sweet. Or conversely, a beer with a low IBU can taste quite bitter due to the malt character. This is a phenomenon called perceived bitterness. Here is a basic chart of styles and IBU range that I pulled off the Firestone Walker website. Light lager, 4 to 10 IBUs. Blonde ale, 14 to 25. Saison, 20 to 38. Pilsner, 25 to 45. Dry stout, 30 to 35. Pale ale, 30 to 50. Hazy IPA, 30 to 50. Hazy double IPA, 45 to 80, West Coast IPA, 50 to 70, Imperial Stout, 50 to 80, and finally, Double IPA, 65 to 100. Though the IBU value is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, I think this list is a good representation. In general, the lighter the beer, the lower the bitterness. On the other hand, the darker the beer, the higher the bitterness. I think the most interesting one at the top of the scale is the Imperial Stout. However, with its typically hearty grain bill, you better believe that you're going to get some additional bitter roasted flavors coming from the malt. So what's the beer with the highest IBU value that I've ever consumed? Well, thanks to the handy filtered search feature of Untappd, it seems to be Bellringer from Beers Inwood Brewery in Charlevoix, Michigan. This double IPA comes in at a whopping 190 IBUs. All I said in my check-in was that it had a big hoppy bite. Finishing up my top 5 are the following. Another double IPA called God's Wrath from Stony Lake Brewing at 159 IBUs. At 150 IBUs in a tie is Saw You Later Schwartz Beer from Pike 51 Brewing and Ninja vs. Unicorn double IPA from Pipeworks Brewing. And last but not least, 2B Peaches Triple IPA from Two Toms Brewing at a slightly smaller 149 IBUs. So I reached out to a few of my beer pals and asked them if there was any question they had related to IBUs. My friend Mark's reply was, "What hops would drive the highest IBU?" What a great question! As I mentioned in the previous episode, there are two kinds of hops, bittering and aroma. The bittering hops are the ones that are primarily responsible for the bitterness. The amount of alpha acids present, as well as the amount of time in the boil where the acids are isomerized, will contribute to a higher IBU. Interestingly, even though some varieties like Galena, Warrior, Columbus, Chinook, and Centennial all have double-digit alpha acid content, this does not necessarily equate to a higher IBU in your beer. Well, why is that? Well, there are a number of different reasons, but probably the easiest one to understand is the ratio of alpha acids to beta acids is lower. The best bittering hops have a 3-to-1 ratio of alpha to beta acids. Aroma hops typically have a 1-to-1 ratio of alpha to beta acids. Another thing to keep in mind is that year to year and even from plant to plant in the same hop yard, the alpha acid content of the same variety can vary 3 to 5%, which will undoubtedly have some influence on the bitterness as well. Based on what I found at the Beer Maverick website, Pato, Apollo, Millennium, Summit, and Bravo are the hop varieties that have the highest average ratio of alpha to beta acids. What's the hoppiest beer that you've ever had? In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, it's mash time. In layman's terms, this is the point where you add grain to your water and slowly heat it up over medium heat. I put a gallon of tap water in my stock pot and then put the grain in a mesh bag that was provided, suspending it loosely in the water, kind of like making tea. I used a binder clip to hold it to the side of the pot so it wouldn't fall in, and then let it steep for 20 minutes. At this point, it really did look like a big pot of tea, kind of a light brown color. Once the time was up, I removed the bag and then heated the liquid up until it started to boil. Next time, I'll walk through boiling the wort. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. Grab a pint and listen in as Chris and Trevor tell me more about brewing, beer, and distribution at One Well Brewing. So Trevor, can you tell me, how did you get started in brewing?
Well, I was a student at Western Michigan University here in Kalamazoo. I was hanging out with my buddy Colt, who's also a professional brewer, and we were drinking a lot of beer. He was donating a lot of quality German 6-packs every Friday and Saturday night, and we drank through his few $1,000s worth of saved up money so he could go to college and drink and party. And he said, hey, my uncle is homebrewing and he's making his own beer. We're kind of running out. What do you think we start trying this homebrewing thing? So in college, started homebrewing. It chose me. Beer chose me. I had a life prior in performance art and growing up in a family really teetotaling, kind of not so much with alcohol. I had the opportunity to travel the world and see that there were different places that respected alcohol with families in different zones. And then I got a job selling homebrew equipment and teaching people how to brew it. So at the Bell's General Store.
Cool.
5 years there, my second half of the college, just delving in and just reading every magazine that I could, brewing 3-5 times a week, gaining a lot of friends that could come over and drink and party at my house. And, I always say that we're in the industry of having fun. And I mean, I got to say, nobody has more fun than we do at One Well. It's just the truth of it. So I'm super passionate and super, historically intense about beer. But I also understand that for a regular person on a Monday after a bad day, they get through a half a pint and they're relaxed and they're moving past their bad day. And on a Friday, when they had the best day ever, they're coming to the pub and they're starting their weekend off the right way. And I just love being a part of that. So beer chose me, and I got my feet wet. And my wife now, as a girlfriend back then, she said, I think there's only one option for you as a profession. So it started homebrewing and just took off from there and feel like I'm moving into the veteran territory.
Nice. Well, you said Colt's uncle was homebrewing already. So did you start out doing like all grain bills to start with, or did you start out with like the extracts and the small, scale like most people do?
Definitely, man. I for sure started small. 5-gallon batches, doing extracts with crystal malt or whatever, growing into all grain supplies, having 5 or 6 things on tap at college at home and bottling, making mead and growing hops and doing, every single thing you can possibly think of. I wanted to do it all. And it kind of comes full circle back to making the mash.
Nice. How about you, Chris? Did you start out as a home brewer as well?
My story and Trevor's story are very similar.
Okay.
After finishing up college, my buddy came to me and he was like, man, we really should come up with a new hobby. And he was really into motorcycles. And I was like, well, I can't afford a motorcycle. So I was like, back to the drawing board. And he said, I've seen some videos on YouTube where we could make our own beer. And I said, oh, okay. So we chipped together about $500, and we actually headed down to the Bell's General Store to buy our first equipment. And guess who happened to be behind the counter selling the homebrew equipment?
Hey. It was Trevor.
That's awesome.
So when I first started off, we started off partial mash, steeping some grains and doing that kind of stuff. And then went from 5 gallons really to 25-gallon batches at home. So, for me, my brew partner changed a couple times. But like Trevor was saying, you end up coming up with some friends that want to taste the product and kind of understand. So, me and my buddy started brewing in the driveway, met Trevor, started buying our homebrew equipment down there. And then from there, the talk was, man, we should really do something with this, and most hobbies do nothing but suck your money away from you. And like Trevor was mentioning, we kind of used it as a way to get cheaper beer. Mm-hmm. And so after years of homebrewing, we decided that we were going to go from a 5-gallon setup to a 25-gallon setup, and started making 25 gallons of beer. And so fast forward, we were really in a situation where 2 other smaller breweries had opened in town that have since closed. But when those places opened, they were actually making smaller batches on a professional side than I was making at home. So these guys were making, 15 to 20 gallon batches, and I was already making 25 gallons at home. And so from there, it was really like, man, if somebody else can do that in a 15-gallon setup, and a lot of us have that smaller brewery in town, that makes those 10, 15-gallon batches. And so seeing some of the other people doing that around here, kind of gave me that idea of, man, we can do this too. And so we scrapped the 25-gallon system when we first opened, and opened with a 3-barrel system for about 100 gallons we were making. But it was funny because the jump from 5 to 25 was bigger than the jump from 25 to 100. So we did a 5X up in the homebrew situation and only did a 4X from the homebrew to the professional. Like Trevor mentioned, after about a year of being open, I was lucky enough to be able to hire Trevor and bring him on the team as somebody that had really worked with me through my early stages of homebrew, and somebody that I was already comfortable with. Not to mention his great personality too. So,
and good looks.
He is pretty good looking.
Sounds like he's humble too.
He is, but he is good looking. He's just telling you the truth.
I'll have to take your word for it at the moment. So Trevor, tell me about the brewing system you have there. How large is it?
Yeah, we've got a 15-barrel Michigan-made craft work system.
Cool.
When the business first opened and we were moving to our 10,000, now 12,000 square foot production facility, Chris wanted to do things the right way, and I appreciate that. The best thing about our facility is that it's built out the correct way to be a great brewery for 100 years. He also wanted to support Michigan as much as he possibly could. The hop scene in Michigan was growing a little bit, which is cool. But, spending more money for maybe some inferior quality products or whatever wasn't the best bet to get money in Michigan pockets right then. So we decided to get the craft work system Michigan made. So right away, we could put some money in the pockets of the people that are welding the stainless and putting it all together. Really cool. You can make a lot of beer on a 15-barrel system. We've got 8 30-barrel tanks, 4 15-barrel tanks, and we saved 3 7-barrel tanks for some small, like one-off batches. With a 7-barrel tank, you get about 14 keg, and that's going to last us here at the well 2 to 3 weeks. And that's a totally weird one-off beer. Everyone in the community wants to come in and taste it. Some people are going to have 2 or 3 pints, and before you know it, boom, it's gone. It's blown. It's on to the new idea, the next thing. And that's one of the things I like about the brewing industry is that you can be hyper-focused and intentional. And as soon as it's on tap, I can mentally kind of let that go and focus on the next thing to make the next people happy, to really keep everyone engaged. It's a great system. We've got 20 taps here at the pub. One of those taps that we keep for root beer, homemade in-house root beer for the kids. We do go through a lot of root beer, as well as 19 other handles for, maybe 8 kind of mainstays, anything from, brown ale, session, IPAs, normal stuff. And then, we've got some distribution beers, more of our flagship beers that we're getting out in cans. We're getting to different places in Michigan, east side of the state, over by Detroit, and up near Grand Rapids and Traverse City a little bit. Really cool stuff, unique stuff. When the business started, there were a lot of beers, a lot of breweries opening, everyone making another IPA. Some of the beers that we tend to focus on are unique, and they are a little bit different. We've got a butter pecan coffee blonde ale. Really want to make sure that we stand out because, once again, we're in the industry of having fun. And if someone wants to have fun with us, more the merrier.
So you said maybe 8 or 10 mainstays that are your flagships. Then the rest of those beers, and how often do you change those up during the year?
As Chris mentioned, we're kind of moving into 2023 and having a little bit more forecasting and allowing to market the beers, maybe just a month in advance. So if somebody comes here with their friends and then they see a sign that says, oh man, next month, that double IPA that I really like, Wappy, it's coming out in a month, man. Hey, and then they make plans with their buddies to come back up and do that. Yeah, we've got a plethora. It's went from maybe 50 different one-offs a year down a little bit, but want to continue to make things fresh. And every time you come out with a one-off and it's a great beer, half of the people want you to make it again or to keep it on tap.
Yeah.
The other half of people want something new, and we can't just continue to add tap handles. But I feel like we roll through the beer quick enough that everyone's happy and we're able to do unique, fun, weird stuff when we need to.
And I think that's another thing that's important too, is that you don't want to have beers that are sitting on tap for months at a time. So you keep them fresh.
You are 100% correct. And over and over and over, I can say this in life, but the best beer is the fresh beer.
Yeah, absolutely. I can really taste the difference if something's not fresh or maybe the lines aren't cleaned as often. I mean, there's so many things chemistry-wise that can go wrong because that's what brewing's all about, and beer and fermentation. So you really have to be careful about that as a brewer.
And even for people like us that are kind of beer nerds, when it's overwhelming for me to go to a tap house with 60 different beers on tap, you damn straight that it's overwhelming for the everyday man.
Exactly.
So I think that we hit where we want to be. It's making everyone happy, and we're going to continue to make people happy.
Yeah, awesome. Clearly, you have distribution across mainly the lower half of the state, a little bit in Traverse City. Do you have any plans to expand that outside the state of Michigan?
Yeah, we're actually about to launch in Puerto Rico here in a few weeks. One of our friends went down to Puerto Rico and is working with a distributor down there. He really believes in our product and wanted to give us an opportunity.
Congratulations. That's really cool.
And then about 6 months ago, we hired a distribution representative to help us continue to build these relationships with different places. So right now, I think that our opportunities are still here in Michigan to expand what we're doing here and continue to build the good name of what we have. I mean, we did a lot of self-distribution before we signed on with a distributor to help build our brand and really make sure that as we've worked on coming up with a partner in distribution, that we brought something to the table as much as they were bringing something to the table. We always suggest, people in Michigan, if you're looking for One Well, the best way to see that maybe happen at your local bar is to ask. I can go in and I can say, hey, Brian's bar, man, you should really serve One Well beer. It'd be really great for you to serve One Well beer. But if your customers come to you and say, hey, we'd really like to see this One Well beer, we always feel like that's the most impactful because those are the people that are regularly there spending their money with the business. As much as I like going in and discussing and sharing the information of the beer with people at the bars, I find it the most humbling when I hear from a bar that it was their customer that was asking for One Well.
Right.
That's really what we're looking for, is to continue to grow the distribution throughout Michigan. Puerto Rico was one of those opportunities that I just couldn't turn down because the person that's going to be there in Puerto Rico selling our beer believes in our product so strongly. I could see us moving to discuss opportunities with distributors in 2023 to potentially look for Indiana distribution and maybe Illinois as kind of our next couple targets as we continue to expand our footprint and trying to figure out, what beers are going to work in different areas, really.
So Trevor, tell me, what is your favorite part of the brewing process?
Man, I'm an early morning person, and I get to work and the steam is coming. You start putting some hot water in the kettle and some steam starts to rise and the water at the perfect temperature is mashing in with the grains, and it goes from the room kind of just maybe smelling empty. Maybe I got a little classical music on in the background or some jazz softly, and you just get this warm, cozy blanket of a hug of the malt as you mash in. When I'm able to start my day like that, it's a very relaxing and real moment that I get quite a few times a week.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking 1851 Zwickel Lager from Bridge Up Brewing in Door County, Wisconsin. This is classed as a Keller beer or a Zwickel beer, which are both historical beer styles. The Keller beer literally translates as cellar beer, referring to its cool lagering temperatures, and the recipe itself probably dates back to the Middle Ages. Historically, both Keller beer and its close relative Zwickel beer are often served directly from the barrel, but may be bottled. From the can, archaeological evidence suggests that the Door Peninsula has been home to human inhabitants as far back as 10,000 BC. More recently, the peninsula has seen numerous Native American tribes, French explorers, fur traders, loggers, farmers, and others. However, it was not until 1851 that Door County had enough permanent settlers to become a county all its own. So we pay homage and say cheers to our past and to our county with this old world libation, aptly dubbed 1851. Without further delay, my parents brought this one back from a recent vacation to visit my cousin in Wisconsin. When they stopped in at the brewery for a little libation and told the owner about the podcast, Trent happily gifted the everyman a mixer-sixer of Bridge Up beers and some Bridge Up swag. What I've had so far is pretty tasty, and you'll hear more about them in a future episode. So I pour this beer out into the Bridge Up Brewing glass that I have that's shaped like a can. Pours a very clean, light golden color. It has some effervescence to it, and has just a very fine, thin white head. On the nose, it certainly has that lager maltiness, that yeast kind of aroma to it. Maybe just a touch of breadiness to it. First sip impression here. Very clean, very light. It's got just a little bit of crispness on the palate as I drink it. And the hops that they're using there adds just a little bit of a bite to it. Again, it's very light, a nice malty backbone to it. Honestly, this is one of those beers that could certainly take to a tailgate, take to your friend's house in the summertime, and just crush on a 6-pack of it. This is a very straightforward beer, no frills. I love the history behind this that was provided in the can. I love the background. I love the whole idea of paying tribute to past and to the location where this brewery is located. Solid lager, everything that you'd want in a good, drinkable, dare say, sessionable beer. I'm a sucker for historical styles, so I give this one a solid 3.5 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Bottoms up when the bridge is up. Cheers, Bridge Up! If you've got a beer you'd like me to drink and describe, leave a comment below. If you're a brewer and have one in mind, direct message me on Instagram and let's see what we can do. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I highlight my first hop variety, continue my homebrewing adventure, and finally wrap up my conversation with Chris and Trevor from One Well Brewing in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Remember to hit the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes. I'd love to hear from you, so please follow me on Instagram, 5beerplan 2022, and leave a comment to let me know what your highest IBU beer is. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.